As a child in the early 1950s, growing up in lower Dorchester County, it was really a time. People were catching lots and lots of oysters. It didn't matter whether you were a tonger or a dredger, or even my Uncle Jim's wife, who had some planted outside their house that she could just fetch up with some little tiny tongs and bring them to the dinner table. And growing up in Wingate, probably one of the better things in my life was having my grandfather, Bronzy Parks. He was a boat builder. He built 438 boats, work boats, skipjacks, dredge boats, and he even built a few yachts, some beautiful boats. And there were some very distinctive things about his boats, and you can still see it today as some survive. They might have had a straight up square stern, some of them, but where they met the side, they had a graceful tumble home, this curve, that made the washboards kind of curl up in the back of the boat and gave it a special look. And you'd be a little boy and you'd be walking through the boatyard, and there'd be men with 2-foot-long planes walking down the side of the boat, making big, long shavings, fairing them up. They didn't use grinders or sanders, and they would bend down and eye it up. And then you could tell they'd say, "There's a little kink right there. Bronzy won't like that. We need to fair her up." And away they would go. And the boatyard was just a really busy place and a nice place. And, of course, you're around all of the men, and they were always doing something to make the day go by because it was really big, hard work. But there'd come a time when they'd have a lot of the machinery running, and there'd be all these loose flat belts running to the bandsaw and the joiner. And it was a pretty dangerous place for a little boy who was about 4 or 5 to be. So Papa would pick me up in his big arm, and as we'd walk out of the boathouse, you'd see him and he'd run his hand down the side of the boat, just double checking that there wasn't some little bump in it. And he'd take me out into the yard and he'd holler, Lev, I got a little press here with me. Come get him." And Lev would come and reach over the side of the boat and pick me up and pull me down into the hall. Lev, during dredging season, was the cook on Uncle Orville's boat. They said he could really cook, except I never went on the Rosie when he was out there. But I spent a lot of time with him in the hull of the boat. Lev was a chinker. And if you don't know, a chinker's the person who caulks the seams of the boat. Cotton in the sides that are above the water line, but oakum when you were just above the chine and down below. And he would hold that iron, that caulking iron, and methodically, it was like a stitch of embroidery almost. He could lap that caulking over so it was like a little half hitch, and with one tap, it fell right into place. And then he'd pick it up and make that little hitch and tap it, and they'd just lock each other in. And it was almost like you could feel the rhythm in his soul as he tapped, because it was like as he tapped in that caulking. And I'll never forget it. And of course, when he would do the oakum wasn't like cotton. It had that oily and that resin smell. And as he hit it, the smell become greater and greater. You could get the aroma, and you could see the glisten of the oil on the end of his caulking iron. Yep, I spent a lot of time with Lev. Took him many a biscuit from my grandmother's kitchen.